Now, the Sisters of Mercy, you were saying, had more of awareness for people who were underprivileged and poor. Was your family in that situation as well, or were you better off?
Oh no, I think we could make ends meet. We could always put food on the table and so on and so on. But my dad was a bit of a moonlighter, to make ends meet, and I think that was a struggle, of course. But I think Mum and Dad had priorities, and so that's where, and they wanted to make sure that we'd have an education and that life was more about than just yourself.
Yeah, it sounds great. Now, you've also worked with Indigenous communities here. Who would be the sort of primary? How could you sort of describe, if you like, the Aboriginal community here?
In Port Augusta,
yeah,
which is where I'm living now. Yes, well, in Port Augusta itself, there's about, in the population of 14,000, I think the latest figure is about 17% of the community would be Aboriginal, and of that number there would be maybe about 26 language groups, so it's quite a gathering place for Aboriginal people. So there's a lot of diversity in that group, and I suppose my work is, as a midwife, is supporting women who are having babies and their families, and
We'll talk a bit about your midwifery, but I just wanted to ask one other question about the Indigenous people. What have you learned through your contact with them?
Oh, to listen with two ears and speak with one mouth.
Right. And what did that teach you?
Well, as a member of the dominant culture in Australia, I would tend to talk too much and not listen enough. And
the people that you've come into contact with, what have you learned from them? What specific things would you say did you find interesting when you got to know them?
Well, I'm not sure about that. It's just my passion is that women deserve better than what so many have to live with, and especially in relation to childbirth and feeding and all those kinds of issues. So I feel quite passionate about in relation to education and support for those women, so that the experience of childbearing and nurturing children is a positive one for them.
What's it like to be involved in a childbirth? Because you would be, how many childbirths would you be involved with in a year, let's say?
Well, people always ask that question, how many babies have you been involved with being brought into the world? And I've lost count, but and at the moment I'm in education, so I'm not directly involved, but I suppose in our program we'd have about 80 births a year.
And what's that like from your perspective, going through that process with women?
It's a miracle every time.
Yeah. How do you feel inside?
It's very hopeful, very hopeful. And it's a very hope-filled experience.
What does it sort of instill in you in respect of the value of each human life? Because you're seeing this newborn baby, the first time it's emerging into the world, it's like...
Well, it's unique, and there's so many possibilities for a way forward and a different future for so many.
What have been the highlights of working as a midwife for you?
Here in Port Augusta?
Or anywhere?
Anywhere. The highlights are always related to whether the experience for the woman is an empowering one for me. And when that happens, I feel like that's been a good experience all round. It's been, and the whole business of staying up all night and following through a labour and so on is worthwhile.
And you indicated earlier that support was so important for women. What sort of support were you thinking of?
Well, often it's emotional, but it's also physical when people are in labour. But emotional support that reassures a woman that she can actually do this. She's made for it. She can do it with the right amount of support.
And when you look back over your life from this point, looking back, what would you say would be, amazing experience that you've had looking back over your life, something that really comes to mind that you thought was really amazing?
Probably one of the most difficult times. Sometimes the most crucial and difficult times can be also the best, and that would have to be one of the times when I was in East Timor, and a baby was born and it wouldn't breathe, and so just resuscitating that baby and then it pinking up and getting on with the business of life was pretty up there.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely a joy, talking with you and learning about your life. Any last comments you'd like to share with people to inspire them about life?
About life. Go for it.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks.